So I've been around now for a little while. I've watched them grow up. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And then I'm now on the Fallen Timbers Battlefield Commission for the Fallen Timbers Battlefield in Maumee, Ohio, where I'm doing some extensive work there. And then I teach full-time at Toledo School for the Arts, our history department, for all of our seniors. I teach all of our senior coursework. So I taught all day, and I'm going to teach tonight. And yesterday I gave a program at the school after hours, so all my history is starting to run together, from the ancient Greeks to this. So when it comes to Henry County history, I really enjoy it. This is where I was raised. I wasn't born in Henry County, but I spent my entire life here. My grandparents grew up in Henry County. So a lot of the material I have is things that I've collected over the years. With me tonight I have the Red Henry County volume books. The Historical Society has these for sale. It documents a lot of our history. And these are my personal ones. They actually used to be my mom's, and then when I moved out I sold them. They literally say in the cover, like, from her mom and stuff like that, for Mother's Day and all that good stuff. So if you want to buy a copy, I don't have any copies with me that are for sale, but I can hook you up with some of these. It documents all the history of Henry County, and it has a lot of family history and history on different locations and places. And particularly of interest, if you are, when we're done this evening, I have all the Damascus Township history pulled up here. You can flip through those pages, has a lot of images and things of that nature. And then I also have with me the original plat maps for Damascus and all of Henry County. These date to 1875. These are part of my personal collection. I did not bring with me the other plat book I have. I just purchased all of Toledo Wood County's plat maps from 1875. So these are the original deals, so if you do take a look at these, please be careful. But Damascus Township is on this page, and Washington Township is on this page. And they're really kind of cool because each little black square dictates where a log house sat, the first settlers in the counties, and then the townships. And with that, it also notates where all the orchards are, which is very interesting. There were a lot of orchards in Damascus Township. There's just great stuff in here, so you'll want to take a look at that. So with that, I have a few other resources with me that I'm going to talk about tonight. It's like school. It's like I'm really immersing myself in this teaching thing. So I have some images that I'm going to pass around. You guys can kind of look at. First images that I'm passing around are the Great Black Swamp, which I'm going to be talking about. The image here on the bottom is an original image. This dates to the 1850s, 1860s, and this image was taken right here in the McClure area. And this is when they're stripping the land. They're clearing the Great Black Swamp. So it's an original picture that I scanned in for you. And then the image on top is an image, modern day. This is actually at a place called Coles Woods. And this shows you how the Black Swamp actually would have looked. So I'm kind of giving you a compare and contrast there. So you can take a look at those. All these copies you can keep if you love them so much. You can put them on your refrigerator. Afterwards, I'll sign some autographs for you. They're going for a lot of money on eBay right now. And you might send these around. I guess I didn't realize how many people I would have. So you can kind of send them around and take a look at them. I apologize. So the top image, yes, is Gold's Woods, which is located over near Archbold, Ohio. It's pretty much the only totally untapped, uncharted area of the Great Black Swamp still in existence. And it's not been touched at all. And then again, that volume image is from kind of our McClure area somewhere around, specifically, I'm not sure where. So you can pass those around and look at them. The other thing I'm going to pass up now is a map of the Great Black Swamp. And this should kind of help give us a perspective of where we are located in the Great Black Swamp. It's kind of important for us to be able to understand geographically why this area was so rich for agriculture and why the settlers were coming in and settling where they were. So the Great Black Swamp was a large swath of land coming from Lake Erie all the way down to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the Great Black Swamp was literally called the Great Black Swamp because it was a large wooded area, dense in underbrush and large canopies of trees. And with that, as the leaves would fall literally in the fall, the leaves would break down and they would decay in the water. And as they decay, the water would, of course, as you can imagine, turn black, the name of the Great Black Swamp had been born.
You want these back? Or?
No, they're all yours. You can color these, you can give them to your grandkids for Thanksgiving and give them something to do. So if you take a look on the map, you can see the geography of where the Great Black Swamp was. The Great Black Swamp is the darker area, and then there are glacial moraines, as we call them, which is where actually what caused the Great Black Swamp was the Wisconsin Glacier pushed into this area, and as it pushed down, when it melted and it receded back to Lake Erie, it left all this water behind and created a very lush area. That's why we have so much agriculture here. In that area, once it became the Great Black Swamp, Native Americans knew that that area was not probably the best area to live because it was full of mosquitoes, it was dark, it was permanently wet and moist. So if you're going to build like a log cabin, if you're going to build a wigwam or anything of that nature, it's going to rot away. So they actually lived on the periphery, the outside edge of the Great Black Swamp. So where you see the white areas where there's no swamp, that's where your villages are going to be located. So the upper bluff of Napoleon, where Frosty Boy is, there was village areas there. If you're familiar in Napoleon, where Anthony Wayne Park area is, there were villages there. If you come back towards Florida, Ohio, there were villages there. That was called Snaketown. So the great thing about the Great Black Swamp on that map is that's where all the animals were. So the Native Americans knew if we camp on the outside of this Great Black Swamp, we can go down in there and we can hunt. That also meant when the Europeans come along, the Europeans know, hey, we can settle on the outside edges of this, go down into the Black Swamp, pull the trees out, build log houses, and we can hunt there. Probably why Samuel Edwards, the Ohio hunter, came to that area. So when we start to think about the Great Black Swamp and how it impacts us, after the swamp is drained, which kind of leads you back to this image, the way that they actually drained the swamp is Ohio passed, literally, it's called the ditch law. And if you don't say it the correct way, your teacher will yell at you. It's the ditch law. And with that, they were able to successfully drain for the first time ever the Great Black Swamp from all the water that was laying in the area. This made it a perfect area for farming and agriculture. So that's why they stripped the trees out. So this area in comparison, what you're looking at on the map, there is one other place where the brush, the timber, and the trees are the same, and that's the Amazon rainforest. So that shows you how dense this area was. Native Americans used to say that when they went squirrel hunting, they did not hunt the squirrels on the ground. They hunted the squirrels up in the trees. Because the Native Americans said a squirrel could start at the lake, so in Toledo, and it could travel all the way to Fort Wayne, Indiana, without ever touching the ground. Because it could go branch to branch to branch to branch. That's how dense this area was. So you can imagine when the Europeans come in and they stripped this, they had a lot of work, and it took them a very long time. But by about 1900, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency that did exist in 1900 said there was only about 10% of the trees left in Northwest Ohio. Once they started clearing it, they kind of went overboard. So that kind of explains to you why this area is so important for hunting and why it's going to have a very dramatic impact for Samuel Edwards. So Samuel Edwards is a pretty unique guy, and when he would have come into this area, he came into this area in the Ohio area around 1812, which is really kind of interesting because the War of 1812 was just breaking out with the United States and Great Britain. And this area was dense with Native American populations, and they were really unhappy with how the relationship was going with the Americans, which is not so good. So what that means is this was a highly conflicted area. We had the lake, we have Michigan, which was not there at the time. The land was there, the state was not developed. So there's a lot of conflict in this area. And if anyone knows anything about the conflict, it all kind of reached ahead in 1794, right here at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, which ceded all the land south of this area to the whites, the Europeans. Everything in this area was given to the Native Americans. The government said, it's the Great Black Swamp, it's crappy, it's terrible land, why would the Native Americans ever need it? So in 1795, they signed the Greenfield Treaty, and they give this land to the Native Americans, and they tell them, we will never need this land. You're good. Go home. They sent the Native Americans back here by the War of 1812. It's very obvious that not only do the British want the land, but the pesky Americans who signed that treaty, who said they would never want it, also want the land. So this became a very contested area, lots of conflict. This would not have been a place that you want to be having Thanksgiving dinner here in another week in your little log house with your little log house family, because the Native Americans were waiting for you. So the fact that Samuel Edwards came into the area in 1812 with his family already shows you the kind of gentleman he is. He's kind of a nut job. He's fun, he's funny, likes to drink, and fight with his brother in a friendly manner, or at least I think. But, so what I have here is, I have a few more images for you that I'm going to pass around. And one of them is what his home looked like that he built in the area. And I didn't print a whole lot of them. You just kind of send this around. It's a log house. If you've seen the log house at the Henry County Fairgrounds, or if you've seen the log houses at Augley's Village, you've seen one log house that kind of gets to the point where you've seen them all. It looks like a log cabin. I love log homes, but again, you've seen one, you've seen them all. So the log home was really a key feature of the Henry County landscape. And if you look at the Damascus flat map here later tonight, there's a lot of them actually in the area. It was incredibly lucrative. It was easy to build because there was so much timber here. And I love this one because you can see they totally stripped all the trees around it to build the home. So this helped clear the area as well. So Samuel Edwards was living a very modest life. He would have had a bed, a chair, and that's about it. And for his family, I'm sure that there were possibly moments where they were like, "Dad, why did you do this to us? Why did you bring us to Northwest Ohio? This place is awful." It's the same thing I've been saying since my parents brought me here. And you do have to imagine, this is a time period, 1812, when they're coming into Ohio as earliest settlers. There's very few trading posts. There's no Walmart. There's no McClure. There's no Bowling Green. When you came out here, you were essentially on the moon. If you broke an arm, if you broke a leg, there was no doctor. If you had a run-in with a Native American, I hope you're good at fighting, because so are they. So when you were out here in McClure, and think about the concept of like street lights and all those things, once it got dark, at 5:30 today, it was dark. And that meant you were totally on your lonesome. So Samuel Edwards would have been a very interesting gentleman when he came out here. And with that, he documents all of his experiences, which is super rare. We have diary accounts from settlers throughout all of American history. And the interesting thing, though, is when it comes to Northwest Ohio, there's not many people that talk about their experiences. And Samuel Edwards, in particular, documents his experiences, and it's in 2 books. And the first book that he writes is The Ohio Hunter. And because I know you all did your homework, how many of you have actually read it? Yes. The rest of you, see you after class. So the book is still available. You can buy it on Amazon. You can get it on your Kindle for 99 cents. Technology. You can buy a hardcover copy for $49 right now online. Where does that money go? That's what I want to know. You know he's not getting it. But he was born in Pennsylvania in 1810. And the Edwards family moved into Ohio in 1812, so he was brought along with his family. And when he reached adulthood, he took up a life of literally hunting to support his family. Most settlers picked up some kind of other skill. They were tradesmiths, so they were doing trade silver, they were making lanterns, you had people who made tents, clothing, anything that was needed in the Northwest Territory, somebody had to make it. Not Samuel Edwards. Samuel Edwards is like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shoot guns. I'm going to drink, and I'm going to go hunting. And that sounds ridiculous, but it actually was a very good thing to be doing because this is a time period where men are still wearing top hats. The military is wearing different kinds of style of uniforms that literally mean different kinds of fur, for head pieces, things of that nature. And there's also still fur trade going on with Native Americans, even in the early 1800s. So another major important part of his life with his hunting is that Europe was going crazy still for furs. The beaver in Northwest Ohio, animals like that, raccoons, things of that nature. So Samuel Edwards saw that. He's like, these crazy Europeans, they have no idea. I'll go out into northwest Ohio and I'll hunt and I'll kill these animals. So he is a very profitable hunter. So some of the animals that he references in his book, I'm kind of just highlighting tonight some of his experiences from his book that I found to be interesting. He references hunting bear, deer, raccoon, wolf, wildcats, and not the Des Moines wildcats. And he references fishing in the rivers. In one particular instance, in his second book, he references how the Maumee River looked when he was fishing. The particular spot that he references, he talks about the water being clear enough that you could see the bottom, and he could see the fish swimming through it. In one particular part, in the 6th chapter of the second book, he references that the Native Americans could go and pull 400 to 500 fish a day out of the Maumee River. Now, if you talk to a fisherman today, that's impossible. Hugely impossible. So the river looked actually a lot different during that time period. Now, I imagine the area he was probably fishing is probably somewhere between Grand Rapids and probably Perrysburg, Waterville area, because it has a stone bottom. So it would appear clear to him. The reason the river looks like it does is due to fertilizer and things of that nature running off into our system, but it also has a clay bottom. So it's continually tilling itself, which gives it kind of that brown look like it's tea that you want to drink, but you don't really because it will make you sick. So he references fishing a lot. And he also references, which I find interesting, frequent battles with Indians over the game. So with this, it's kind of interesting because we also need to acknowledge that we can't really take everything face value in Edwards' book. Samuel Edwards is writing a book about himself. And if we know anything about men, they all have egos. With that, I'm not saying anything he's saying is false, but I'm not saying you should also read it and be like, that's the way it was. In this particular reference, he talks about fighting 40 Native Americans by himself. So this is either the most amazing battle that you would have ever seen, or clearly he's referencing Spider-Man. So he says, in his words, he says, I told the Indians this was my bear. So what's happened is he apparently shot a bear. These Native Americans come up on him in the Henry County area, and they're like, that's our bear. And he says, and I told them I was going to have it. They did not like this disposition of their game, and one said, no, give you $2 and keep the bear. I told him no. I would have the bear skin and the dog too. And if my dogs chase any more bear into the woods and they caught them, I should take them from them. And accordingly, shouldered the skin and started for home. The Indians cast an angry look at me, but durst not to follow me, knowing of my last interaction with the natives. So it's, okay, why are they scared of you? So in another later chapter, he references how he takes on an entire group, and he says, they became so enraged, the Indians, that one of them drew a club and struck me upon the nose, making it bleed badly. Before this, I had been very much frightened, but now all fear forsook me, and I replied to his civility with a blow from my fist just over his eye, which laid him senseless at my feet. Another came furiously toward me and attempted to catch my legs. I then released my dogs. And he begins to reference how he basically single-handedly beats these Native Americans senseless in the woods along the creek that he references, which I imagine this incident happened probably on Turkey Foot Creek. That's where he does most of his hunting, and that's where most of his interactions seem to happen with Native Americans. That was the best area for hunting in this literal neck of the woods. So if you were in McClure, which did not exist at that time, but you were hanging out here for some reason, and you were going to go hunting, you were going to follow Turkey Foot Creek down the river. Later references, he talks about another experience, and he says, as he was passing the boat, I sprung upon his back, and I clenched him by the horns. In this particular instance, what he's referencing are not Native Americans, because they don't have horns. But what he was talking about is he is actually jumping on the back of a deer. The water was not quite so favorable a place for fighting with the sturdy buck. This was a brave little animal. Soon it had the best of the bargain. After knocking me off its back, it plunged me underneath the water, and I found myself underneath the beast and his feet. He gave me such a drumming as I had never gotten from a man or beast before or ever since. So Samuel Edwards' life, I'm sure this guy, he had to have been like the most achy person ever. If he's not getting lopped on the head by Native Americans with war clubs, he's literally getting gashed by literal deer in the Maumee River, trampling him to death. Frequently he tracked bears. There were a lot of bears in Northwest Ohio. It's hard for us to fathom that because that's not a lifestyle that we're accustomed to. Thanks to hunters like Samuel Edwards, they pretty much rid the area of bears. And in one particular instance, he references a bear that I found very interesting because he was so determined to kill this bear that he tried to shoot at it. He hit it, but the bear began running. And he chased it all the way along the river through Turkey Foot Creek. And he chased it all the way, probably up through the McClure area and all the way into Wood County. And it sounds like he did not officially capture this thing pretty much until he hit like the highway out towards where the Wood County Historical Society is. So he chased and chased and chased and chased this animal. And when we think about it, this is his job. So it's really important for him to acquire these animals and these furs. So for him to like chase an animal all day at face value seems very crazy. But when you hear how much money he gets for some of these animals in the book, and you actually do the math on it, sometimes he receives $60 to $70 or upwards of $80 for some of these furs, which by today's standards would be about $260 all the way up to $450. So I would chase a bear for $450. Or not. But, so he references how nasty this bear is, which I would imagine was probably pretty nasty because he already shot the thing. So I don't know any bear that would be upset to begin with. And he says, I stopped, I hesitated, and then I determined, if I died, to die fighting this bear. I turned about and met the bear face to face. And most fortunately for me, he who had, and it's horrible to read this stuff sometimes because it's in the dialect or the way in which they speak, so you'll have to forgive me sometimes. Whom we had left for mortally wounded appeared just as this crisp of my deliverance and attracted the bear's attention just as she was springing up with both paws to strike me. I then took out sharp sticks and struck him until we made him mad. I beat him to make him angry. Who is this person? Like, why would you do this? Shoot him. Well done. And then against any effort, I set my dog upon him. A bloody battle ensued. And again, it's like, why would you stick your dog on a bear? And so then they chase it through Wood County, and they shoot and they kill it, and everything's all hunky-dory. But then I was really surprised because he again references his dog later on. And he references that there's a wolf in the area of Turkey Foot Creek. And he takes his dog, drags his dog down to the creek, and he lets the dog loose, his dog, to attack this wolf, which would not be very, that wouldn't be great. You have a hunting dog. I'm really surprised they didn't put it in that kind of harm's way. Again, much like Samuel Edwards, this dog had to have been like crazy. And he references that the dog and the wolf begin to spring up and they get into a fight. And again, him with the sticks. I don't know what the deal's with the sticks. I don't know if that references something else. But he picks up sticks and he begins striking his dog, his own dog, and the wolf to incite them and get them more angry. And he says, this made the wolf mad, very mad. And then against I set upon him with my dog, and a bloody battle ensued, in which the wolf proved victorious. The dog being glad to retreat, dragging its backside, and losing one of its eyes. So I'm not sure what his point was there in training his own dog. It's very interesting because when we think about like hunters, but we also think about the time period, and I'm not sure some of you older gentlemen out there might maybe have known your grandfather to do this or your father. I imagine like maybe this wasn't a very good hunting dog, and sometimes if your dog's not complying and doing what you needed to do, had your fun with it, unfortunately. I know I'm being videotaped, so this is not like animal rights activist type of issue here, but back in that time period, we're talking that he has to feed this dog, he has to give it shelter, he has to take care of it. So if it's not a very good hunting dog, they don't have Netflix. They don't have Hulu going on their televisions in their log houses. So, sometimes these men put these dogs up in some pretty terrible situations. Later in his book, when we think about the wildlife, that's what's really cool about his book, that I think if you're anyone who's into natural wildlife and habitats and the education of that, like Oak region over there, he talks a lot about animals that are no longer here anymore. And many of them that are even extinct. So I think it's really interesting to think about reading something where this person is referencing things that were like walking down Main Street of McClure at one time. And he references these mammoth sturgeons that he watches in the waters, which would be in the Maumee River. And he talks about fastening a loop of cord that was attached to a spear around my flat hand. And with the instrument of death firmly clenched in my right hand, I made a bold start toward the young villain. At length swam safely to the shore. The subjugated sturgeon followed me at a rapid rate. My friends congratulated me on having accomplished a very daring feat. We drew the fish ashore, these very large fish, and measured them, and they measured at 9 feet in length. So if anyone likes swimming in the Maumee River, you wouldn't have liked swimming in the Maumee River then, because the fish and the animals that lived in abundance around that area were incredibly large. So again, it's kind of interesting to read about his experiences here. And in the Henry County Historical Society volume, they actually, volume 3, they actually have a whole essay written about Samuel Edwards. It's about a page and a half. I won't read the whole thing to you, but it does reference his experiences a little bit. And it starts right off the bat. Samuel E. Edwards was known as the Ohio Hunter, and was the author of 2 books, The Ohio Hunter and The Western Pioneer. So if you're going to go home and do your homework tonight, those are the books you need to look for online. The Ohio Hunter and The Western Pioneer. Both books told his experiences hunting in the wilds of northwestern Ohio in the early 1800s. He once said that he wrote the books so that his grandchildren and their children could learn of his early days in Ohio as a hunter, and so that people would appreciate the hardships of our early ancestors. So he clearly had a motivation behind writing what he was writing. So when we think about kind of his bias about himself, and a little bit of an ego, I do think it speaks volumes about him that he had enough longevity or long sight to be like, this is important stuff that I'm living out, and the world's going to change, and I should write it down and document it so people can learn from it. So really kind of an interesting gentleman there. It references his childhood growing up and everything. But what is really neat is it quotes in here the Henry County Signal in 1883 had an item in which it stated, Uncle Samuel Edwards was the man the state employed years ago to cut out the old Turkey Foot Road that led from the south to north to Sand Bridges in Henry County. Samuel E. Edwards was also remembered for many years as a favorite Pioneer Day speaker that relayed his early experiences in Henry County. This day was usually celebrated on the 4th of July. So on the 4th of July in Henry County, they literally honored him. And it was a tradition that on this day, Samuel stood on top of the Henry County Courthouse steps and he would deliver speeches from his books and his experiences. Unfortunately, none of those speeches were recorded or remain today. So he was clearly really well revered, and that was one thing that I found very interesting in talking to Carol. I'm like, do you know who Samuel Edwards is? And she's like, no, I don't. It's like, wow, this gentleman who tried to record so much of his history and his legacy, and clearly the community of then were very well aware of him, and they really liked to hear about him. And as the generations were going on, we kind of started to forget about him a little bit. He had 2 wives. His first wife died relatively young, and then he met his second wife, Rachel. And he talks about how they met, which I found to be a very interesting and a little bit hilarious story he references in the book. And they were actually in a log house down in Turkey Foot Creek down here, and the ice had gone out and it began to flood. And the house was built very close to water, and there were multiple people in the house, And as the house began to fill with water, again, I don't know why people do this stuff during this time period, but I would imagine it was probably dark, they had nowhere else to go. Probably when they woke up, the house was already full, I would imagine. But it said that they spent the rest of the night in the log house as the water was pretty much rising, and by morning it was like 4 feet deep. And that everybody was like in their beds and in the loft above. And what I found interesting is that this was the first time that he met this Rachel, was in this house, and him and her got stuck in the loft together. And they got stuck up there all night. And he referenced that they didn't sleep a wink. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know if this is like Rose and Jack on Titanic, there's water, I don't know what happened. But what's more interesting is he leaves the next morning on horseback. He comes back to the McClure area where his settlement was, which we don't know where it is. That's the problem with a lot of the records. The Henry County Courthouse burned down, 1879, so we have those records of where his land was. He's not referenced too much on his plat map, which I wish he was, because it's 1875. So where did he kind of disappear to? Or his land, I'm not quite sure. The other major issue is that when his family comes into the area, they come into the area in 1812. And if you know anything about the War of 1812, the British do a really dirty deed and they burn the White House. So all those records about where they settled in the area are long gone. They're like under the White House somewhere in ash. But what I found really interesting was, so he hangs out with Rachel this night. One night, the next morning, he rides back to the McClure area, rides back down. I don't know if he got cleaned up or what, he doesn't say what he did, and he goes to the door, he raps on the door, and he proposes. One night. He knew her for one night. And she's like, sure. And they get married. I suppose it was an easy decision for her because Rachel's father was actually the Lutheran minister. He was the pastor. So I'm sure it was pretty easy. He does not reference when they got married. I mean, he was right there, so maybe she was like, sure, let's do this. And they did it right then and there. I'm sure it was a pretty cheap wedding. So with that, there's other information referenced in here you might want to take a look at. And with that, it's kind of interesting as it gets on into the other page here. It talks about all his children that he had. And I would just like to reference some of his children's names. One of his first sons that he births, his name is George Washington. And his third son's name is Thomas Jefferson. And so with that, I think that also kind of shows you the type of gentleman that Samuel Edwards was. He's kind of like this all-American guy. And when we think about it, he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Lewis and Clark from the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1803. Because he's coming out here, he's forging his way, he has no idea what was out here at the time, he's engaging with Native Americans. Now Lewis and Clark's expedition actually went a little bit better with Native Americans. They weren't getting whomped on the head with clubs. Samuel Edwards is. But, he has a lot of interactions, he's clearing a lot of land, and he's really kind of paving the way for us to be here, especially when you think about him clearing roads along Turkey Foot Creek. Those are the same roads we use today. So we're literally treading on the same paths that he walked and these Native Americans walked. He references, all the children are referenced in the book here, and kind of unfortunate, he references how tough and strong he is and how he felt he was kind of like a manly man for all his hunting. So much so, he encouraged two of his boys to go off and serve in the Civil War. So they enlisted with the 68th Ohio here in Napoleon. They went off and served, and they're both killed in 1861. So I can't imagine what that experience was like, right? Like this tough, wooded guy, this outdoorsman. It would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall and know how he received that. Was he sad? I'm sure he was, but I'm sure, did he view that as like giving the most for their country? It would be interesting to talk to him about that, but of course we'll never know. In the Henry County Historical Society book, it also references the Great Bear Chase of 1857, where Samuel and two of his sons started on a bear chase. They again run through most of Henry County, deep into the woods, and then into the woods of Wood County. They killed that bear that they were chasing. It was a large male whose hide brought in $60. and it was the last big hunt of the year for them. So in referencing a lot of his hunting, I found it really interesting how many animals that he did kill. On some of his hunts, it's referenced that he killed 68 raccoon, this is on one day, 68 raccoon, 15 squirrels, 14 rabbits, 13 deer, and in one particular season, he killed upwards of 86 white-tailed deer in just one season in the middle of fall. So this guy was busy. And it also shows you, though, the wildlife that existed in Northwest Ohio and how that has rapidly and drastically changed. There's hunters in McClure right now that would be like, what? You killed that many deer in one season? I'm still setting my deer stand. And you know, this is a time period when he's hunting with guns like this one here. This is considerably shorter, it's a little bit shorter. This is a flintlock. And with that, my point in bringing this in is this is like top of the technology for that time period. And it's also very cumbersome to load, it takes a lot of time. And if it doesn't go off, you have a problem because you're being chased by a bear, which apparently happens a lot to him. So a flintlock has a very simple kind of mechanism and feature to it. And it's a black powder musket, which basically means that if you like fireworks, you would like a gun like this. And with a black powder musket, what you're basically going to do is you're going to cock this back. There's a pan in here, and you're going to fill that with your black powder. And once that's full, you're going to flip what they call the frizzen bag. Now, this is the loading process, so I'd like to point this out. I'm explaining it to you. But like, we're loading our guns, we're being chased by a bear through Wood County. I'm going to pull my musket ball, whatever shot I'm shooting, I'm going to put it down the barrel, and then I'm going to pull my ramrod out, and I'm going to pack that down into the black powder that I'm putting into the barrel. So then I'm going to cock this back, and then this is when things get dangerous. You point and shoot. Now the problem is that with black powder, and I'm sure Samuel Edwards has a lot of stories about it, he just doesn't really reference them, is that black powder gets wet. If it's too damp, or anything of the nature, just too much humidity, it won't spark. And you're going to have a cool little sound that goes. And imagine if you're in the woods, and there's a deer that you're just trying to shoot, and that's all it does. You just lost. So, you got to reload. So, when we think about the technology that he's using, it's incredibly primitive for the time period. Any trees he cuts down, he's doing it by hand. Any deer that he catches or whatever, he's skinning it, gutting it, doing it all by hand. And I know many would say, yeah, people still do that. I know, I'm on to some of you hunters. You take it to Brookview Farms, you have them prepared for you, you get the jerky back. This guy would have had to have done all of these kinds of tasks. So his life out here in McClure, the Damascus area would have been pretty rough. With that, I also have with me his obituary from the Democratic Northwest. And you can keep this if you like, put it on your refrigerator, wear black when you read it. Every day you get up and you think your life's rough, you'll be reminded of his life out here, the frontier of Northwest Ohio. And it simply reads, Samuel was known as the Ohio Hunter and was the author of 2 books, The Ohio Hunter and The Western Pioneer. Both books told of his experiences hunting in the wilds of northwestern Ohio during the early 1800s. The Ohio Hunter called to his long home, old age cuts off an eventful career of noted character. Samuel Edwards, the Ohio Hunter, passed away peacefully from this earth to his long rest at his home in Edwardsville, this county, on Monday evening last week. But a few days before his death, Mr. Edwards was in Napoleon and spoke from the courthouse steps. He was the father of Mr. T.J. Edwards, a prominent businessman of Deschler, and was one of the oldest citizens in this part of Ohio, and is known all over the state as the pioneer hunter. He located in this county when the red men and wild animals were almost as plentiful as the trees in the forest. Mr. Edwards was born in Armstrong County, Pennsylvania, March 22nd, 1810. In 1812, his parents moved to Washington County, Ohio, and he has been a resident of this state ever since. Mr. Edward was the father of 16 children, 8 by his first wife and 8 by the present wife, 14 of whom are still living. His funeral took place yesterday, being preached at the Advent Church in Hamlin by Reverend Lindsay, and his remains interred in the cemetery 12 miles north of Hamlin, followed by a large and sympathetic gathering of friends and relatives. In 1866, he published a book entitled The Ohio Hunter, which recites his career and incidents of pioneer life in an interesting manner. He sold the books throughout the state, and hundreds of households contained the volume. Democratic Northwest, Employment, 1895. So if you're interested in getting as close to Samuel Edwards as possible, and one of our kind of, I would call like a founding father of Henry County in the McClure, Damascus area, he is buried in Moyer Cemetery. So he's not too far from where we are tonight. And I have a couple pictures of his tombstone, but if there's somebody that wants to go out and visit him, because I can guarantee you he hasn't had anybody probably out there in a while, I have a map for you. And your public cemetery, it's Moyer Cemetery, I'm sure you're familiar with it. He's buried kind of in the center, where all the pine trees are, and he's buried there with his wife, Rachel, as well. And his tombstone conveniently says on it, the Ohio Hunter, so you can't miss it. And it's kind of a unique stone. I have some pictures here. I didn't print a lot. Who wants pictures of a tombstone? But you can like kind of zip that around and take a look at it. And I know that you went out and visited his grave.
No, we're going to.
You were going to. Okay. Just kind of send that around. Just take a peek there. And so when we think about like the lasting legacy of someone and in history, I think this kind of shows you that Samuel Edwards did an excellent job of documenting our history and our county. But like anything in history, it has a certain timeline of life to it. And while Samuel Edwards thought that he was preserving his legacy and the legacy of Henry County through successive generations, not talking about these things, not educating about it, not speaking about it, we kind of lose our history. And with that, I find it very important and very gratifying to be able to look through the Henry County Historical Society volumes. I know McClure has their books as well. And I cannot express the importance it is, and I know it sounds like a commercial pitch, but in supporting places like the McClure Historical Society in Henry County. Because if these organizations cease to exist, people like Samuel Edwards will cease to exist. The job that the McClure Historical Society does in Damascus, and I know Broughton, all these organizations do is try to perpetuate, protect, and preserve this history so it's there and accessible for other generations. Samuel Edwards paved the way for these organizations to exist by starting that process. So when you think about like coming out tonight and enjoying these kinds of things, it's wonderful if we can speak about it, educate our children about it, and make sure that we celebrate it, we acknowledge it, and keep that legacy going. So, you know, tell your friends and family, hey, have you ever heard of Samuel Edwards? Buy the book online, read it, share it with other people, and talk about our history. It's really wonderful stuff. At this time, because I don't want to go too long, does anybody have any questions about Samuel Edwards, the Great Black Swan, Damascus Township, or anything at all? Yeah.
Do you have any dealings or known Simon Kenton?
Simon Kenton. It is my understanding that they passed through Simon Kenton's area several times, and that he was in a relationship with him. However, the problem was that Simon Kenton also was a very good hunter. So he pretty much, he being Samuel Edwards, stuck to this area because there was pretty much nobody out here. So that's the kind of secret of why Churchfoot Creek in this area was the stomping grounds, because Simon Kenton was more towards Fort Wayne kind of area and kind of like passing through. This gave Samuel Edwards' oasis. So you can bounce between Will County and Henry County. Yes?
How much credence is there in about that buried treasure along Churchfoot?
Probably limited to possibly none. The reason I say that is because they reference the Native Americans having gold, and Native Americans in this area and in all of American history found very little monetary value in gold.
Well, they stole it from the British.
Right, that's the rumor. But again, in research, the British have never had any reference of any kind of interaction with Native people in Northwest Ohio like that whatsoever. When we think about war and conflict in Northwest Ohio, even just going going off the sheer basic information we have, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the British to be shipping around gold between forts or anything of that nature. If the Native Americans left anything behind in Shunk, I think there probably is a misreference for a misunderstanding between cultures, where the Native Americans knew that they were leaving their dead behind, because there's a cemetery out in Shunk that's still there, where their burials are. I'm not going to disclose where that is located, but there's a reference in Going Westward, or in the Innuit Act, where they reference that their dead were as sacred to them as gold to the white man. And I think that probably somebody heard that, read that, saw that, and were like, ah, there's gold in them dark hills. And that's where that rumor came from. Yes?
And look, when you took bear here, it turned out how much oil we got.
Yeah.
What they do with the oil?
Bear oil is actually very, very useful. It's kind of like a Spam of the 1800s. Native Americans used it to mix with their paint so that they could put it on their body. Bear oil also repels mosquitoes, which means that everybody in Northwest Ohio was lathering themselves up with bear oil. There was no off. And women did use it sometimes in their hair. It gave it a nice shine or sheen, so it was silky smooth. It smelled a little weird, but hey, if everybody's wearing bear oil, you're good. You can use it, again, in cooking. There's a lot of use. Lantern, yeah, there's just a lot of uses for bear oil. Today, I mean, it's just so rare. I mean, because we don't have bear really in the area anymore. But I know in the reenactors world, there's like a huge market for bear oil, and it's very expensive. So, any other questions? Yeah.
When I was talking earlier, it was the honey tree that I was speaking of at the beginning, where they carry all that honey back to the...
Yeah, yeah, referencing, and again, when I joke about him being in pain all the time, you know, when you think about all of our aches and pains we got today, I mean, this man is dragging deer, he's dragging bear, I mean, they shot that bear down in Moyer County, and then they dragged it back to this area. How did you even do that in Big Black Swamp? Well, he had sons with him, or, okay, but, you know, these are relatively small people. However, Samuel Edwards does reference his height and weight in his book, which I think might show a little bit of his ego, because he was 6'3", 100 and I'm gonna blank on it. He was like 100 and, do you remember? It's like 160 pounds, 670 pounds.
That would be really scary.
But he's tall. He's tall for the time period. So with that in mind, weight-wise to height-wise, he kind of went a little bit of a beanpole. But they're carrying an immense amount of weight. So yeah, when they're carrying the honey and stuff, I mean, the trips that these people are making are ridiculous.
I think they said it took 3 trips to get back.
Yeah, that's down and back and down and back and down. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Was all the animals they killed, was they able to use the meat, or was the meat just discarded, or
Yeah.
pretty much just kept the
Hence
furs?
why Native Americans and all across the United States never really got on board with, you know, liking the way Europeans treat animals, because in their culture, obviously, they're eating them, they're doing all kinds of stuff, they're making food, and everything. The fur trade was purely what it said. It was all about the fur. So when it comes to using the bear fur, the deer skins, or what have you, they're gutting these animals, they're leaving these animals, and they're taking the fur and they're selling the pellet. Now, obviously, he's going to use some meat, you know, but what do you do with 38 deer in one day? I mean, or in one season. Yeah, freezing.
In what?
What are you doing when he's going down and he's pulling 130 fish out of the river? I mean, that's a lot of fillet of fish. I mean, you could supply McDonald's. So, unfortunately, a lot of times these animals went to waste.
Well, he didn't do what Andy Oakley did, go out and shoot stuff and sell it to people?
The
Restaurants?
problem is in this time period, there's not that many people around. And most of these people are coming from a place of, like, and this is what's always weird about how things change. Like, if we went back in time right now, none of these historical people would know how to put gas in our car. But we all know how to put gas in our car. If you went back in time, all these guys were out hunting. So why would I buy gear for you that you shop when I can go out and get one for my wife and my kids? I can do it. Ego, male. So yeah, referencing people buying stuff, not much. Other questions? Yeah.
Didn't they have horses and wagons? I mean, he had to have some.
Not too
walk
much.
everywhere, did
The problem with the Great Black Swamp early on was, and the first major highway that came in was the pike from Fremont to Perrysburg. And there's a lot of references that they talk about where they would start out, and by the time that they would even get remotely close to Perrysburg, there was an area out there where your wagon wheels would literally you'd hit it, and it was like Indiana Jones or a movie, your wagon would drop off into the mud. So there's a lot of references to like wagons just ditched, piles of wagons ditched because of the mud and everything else. Anyone who's ever swam along the river knows that you get out of the boat, you step down that bank, and you're not going to be seen for days. So the area out here was just too muddy, too dense. And that's like Native Americans. We picture them in movies always riding horses, not in Northwest Ohio. They were on canoes on Maumee, and if they weren't, they were taking the footpaths that followed the sand bridges and along the river banks. That's why Old US Route 24 is where it is.
And
That was the footpath. And then it was the canal.
that's where you find all the arrowheads in the field, on the sand
Absolutely.
ranges. So.
Yeah, and on those sand bridges. Yeah. So yeah, not too much. And if you think about a horse, those are heavy animals. You throw a guy on the back of that, you run through some mud, you're gonna have one really upset horse, and you better hope you don't break its leg or its ankle if it sits down to you. Then you're really in trouble. Any other questions?
Is his second book available anywhere?
Yeah, you can find that online. His first one, I think, is more interesting because that's documenting the earlier history, but the second one, I mean, is just as good. That one's really interesting because he starts to reference all the change. And, you know, in his lifetime, just like our lifetime, things changed rapidly. I mean, he came into this area when there was, like, not much around. 1850s, the railroads were coming in.